Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Silver Slayer. Thanks for tuning in and welcome. You guys know me. I don't care about your political view. I don't care if you wanted candidate A or candidate B or candidate C to win. I don't care. I'm looking at things from a realistic and concerned person who understands how the economy works and understands our financial system and what's at stake. Now, since Biden won, a lot of things have came to light. A much bigger stimulus package, which is already extremely dangerous for reasons we'll talk about, but also a $10 trillion rescue that is floating around from McKinsey. And this article is written from McKinsey, so this isn't going to be someone bashing it or looking at it. This is going to be his perspective. So it's going to get interesting because he's going to be trying to prove to us why this is a good idea. Now, a lot of people have been posting things on social media about how excited they are about the direction of the nation, and I probably shouldn't, but I kind of sneak in there and kind of throw some information at them. I'm not trying to rain on their parade, but I think people should know. A lot of people don't even know America's 27 trillion in debt. They think we have boatloads of money to throw out. They don't understand that things are serious here. So I kind of do that, and I try to be a respect. I try to do it in a respectable manner. But these people are very sensitive, so uh, it's probably not a good idea, right? But I do it anyways. And see, I'm not trying to be a hater. I honestly want people to understand, right? I talk about this on a daily basis. I want people to understand what's happening behind the scenes and the consequences that are at stake. Because doing this is like trying to pay off a credit card with another credit card. It's going to catch up sooner than later, and when it does catch up, there's going to be consequences. There's going to be prices to pay. And who's going to pay them? Us, the people. So, the $10 trillion rescue. How governments can deliver impact. So, they're doing this to try to fix all this pain, all this damage, which is a great idea, but that number is unrealistic, right? A big stimulus package is a great idea. It's going to help a lot of people, but at what cost? We're thinking too in the now and not thinking about the later. It's kind of like someone who's going to you know, try something crazy, like try a crazy substance or something, and they're thinking about it right now, but not thinking about if they might get addicted, or they're not thinking the things through. They're not playing the tape through. So, and that's that instant gratification, right? So governments have announced the provision of trillions of dollars in crisis relief, but translating that into sustained recovery will not be easy. The pandemic crisis is one of the worst health emergencies that the world has witnessed for a century, and its economic impact could just be steep. And later on, we're gonna kind of we're gonna skim through this, and then I'm gonna talk about why you need precious metals. Hopefully, if you're reading this, you already understand why. But I'm gonna talk about how precious metals, how gold and silver, will be intertwined and incorporated and affected through all this. So the it took several quarters for unemployment to peak in other crises. The economic shock of this pandemic has been larger than that of any previous crisis, and it materialized within weeks. 5 weeks into the crisis, the weekly number of jobs lost in the United States continues to exceed any pre-pandemic record, and in some sectors, demand came practically to a halt in a matter of days as a result of lockdown measures. Governments' economic responses to the crisis is unprecedented, too. $10 trillion announced in the first 2 months, which is 3 times more than the response to the 2008 2009 financial crisis, right? 2008 financial crisis, the credit crisis, were $1 billion stimulus. We're talking about $10 trillion stimulus here. If that's not going to completely completely wipe out the dollar, then I don't know what will. The dollar's already on its last leg. The dollar's lost 98% of its purchasing power and 44% in the last 20 years. It's getting worse. So if we come into this situation already broke, 27 trillion in debt, already broke, and now the whole world knows we're broke, people opting out of the USD being the world's reserve currency, now $1 trillion stimulus, and now throw another 10 trillion on, what is going to happen? Western European countries have already allocated close to 4 trillion in amount almost 30 times larger than today's value of the Marshall Plan. The magnitude of government responses has put delivery into uncharted territory. Governments have included all shapes and forms in their stimulus packages, guarantees, loans, value transfers to companies and individuals, deferrals, and equity investments, as if advice from all modern schools of economic thought has been applied at the same time. So here's Exhibit 1. Across countries, an economic stimulus response to this pandemic crisis outsized those to the 2008 financial crisis. So Germany, 2008 is the smaller, the darker circle, and this pandemic is the light blue. So Germany, and what are these numbers of? Economic crisis response percent to GDP. So Germany 3.5, 33. You have that's obviously the biggest. United States 4.9 to 12.1. So is it working though? That is a good question. The crisis is far from over. And this is the thing. Now that someone else is the head is in charge here, things are gonna get revamped and reset, which is going to be interesting because we know when something first starts, it takes time to get it in motion, to get it really flowing. So now we kind of almost have to start over again, and that's going to be a vulnerable first couple of months. That's a vulnerable period while they're working out the kinks and really trying to see, But Biden did do good with Ebola, and that could have been a lot worse. There's definitely been some proof that he knows what he's doing, and I'm not trying to hate. I feel like politics nowadays are so touchy or so sensitive that if I say one thing, people assume that they assume my thoughts and my opinion and what I think, which is so not true. Honestly, I really don't care. Like I really don't care about who should have won or who. I'm just looking at this realistically, right? The crisis is far from over, and recent consumer surveys show that spending is not coming back yet. This article, based on analysis of the economic responses to 54 of the world's largest economies, representing 93% of global GDP, has the following aims. 1. Present breadth of measures of governments that have undertaken to support companies and citizens. 2. Assess how the distinct choices being made by countries will affect both their short-term welfare and their long-term economic trajectories. This is very important. This is what we're talking about here. Assess the distinct choices being made by these countries and how they will affect both their short-term welfare and their long-term. And that's exactly what we are concerned for here. This is literally the problem. How can they find a realistic number, and the keyword's realistic number, that can help all these people, all these businesses, that can help cure or at least put a band-aid on the damage without throwing things into an extremely bad position financially? Is that even possible since we're already so far in the hole? And this is what I've been talking about for so long. With precious metals, you have to think ahead. And we knew the dollar was already, before this pandemic, right? We've been talking about this stuff for years. I've been making video for like 4 years on this channel. We knew that the dollar was headed downwards. And it's like a snowball effect. It's getting bigger and getting faster and getting worse and causing more damage. We knew that. But I always thought about the unknown variable. What is going to happen when something happens and we have to put our money on the table. We don't have money to put on the table. This is that situation. Now everyone knows it around the world, and things are definitely at stake, and it's severe. Highlight the critical questions that governments will need to consider as they shift the focus from short-term relief to the stimulation of economic recovery for the long term. Governments respond with unprecedented spending, 10 trillion and counting. Our benchmark of stimulus action taken by 54 countries shows significant variation in the size of the response, with some countries committing to spend as much as 40% of GDP. And that's despite experiencing similar GDP losses and undergoing inline lockdowns, both in stringency and duration. Most emerging market countries' stimulus packages have a significantly lower spending. So it looks like some people are on page and other people aren't. Right? Governments around the world have rolled out economic assistance packages. So there's also something else that comes to mind. People are relying on the US dollar here, right? I mean, like that is blatantly obvious. Countries, the US dollar is the world's reserve currency. Keyword is reserve. It's US dollars the backup. It's the bottom. It's the one denomination through everyone from every country. So when people are throwing stimulus out, money they don't have, they're relying on the US dollar. But the US dollar is getting hurt as well. So if that crumbles, the entire world's financial system would essentially crumble. Like just thinking about the different scenarios and looking at this as realistic as possible, I'm just trying to figure out well, obviously there's no solution. We've known that. I've been talking about this for so long. There is no solution. The only alternative is precious metals. There's no solution. We're too deep in the hole to find a solution. But there is an alternative, and the safest, smartest alternative is gold and silver. But they need to find a way to make this realistic and not be as impactful as it looks like it's going to be. So, given the broad global impact of this pandemic, few populations, businesses, sectors, or regions have been able to avoid the knockoff of economic effects. That means government measures have had to support large parts of the economy in a very short time to maintain financial stability, maintain household economic welfare, and help companies survive the crisis. In addition, countries have tended to escalate their interventions as the crisis increase and severity and lockdown persist. 9 of 10 countries in our data set have already announced at least one additional financial relief or stimulus package. 2/3 of countries have announced 3 or more packages, while a few countries have announced as many as 6 or 7. Which countries are those? Are they going to talk about them down here? Wow, 6 or 7. And like, what's the amount? What percentage? Like, I want to know the numbers there, because, like, I keep saying, it's like, I'm trying to think of something to compare it to, right? It's really like, okay, it's like this. It's like you have a kid, right? And the kid wants to go trick-or-treating. So you tell the kid, you can go trick-or-treating, just don't eat too much candy or you're going to have a stomach ache. So the kid says, okay, doesn't think about anything you said. So the kid goes trick-or-treating, eats a whole bunch of candy because he wants the candy. She wants the candy. And it's so good, and he's eating so much, and it's amazing at first. But then he goes to lay down, and it catches up to him. He has a stomach ache. Everyone's thinking about the right now, how great it would be to have all this money to help. But you got to think about the whole thing. Thus far, the announced stimulus measures have 3 primary objectives. Maintain financial stability, which is impossible. 2, maintain household economic welfare. 3, help companies survive the crisis. It looks like everyone's just focused on this one, not really so much anything else. But, and I'm sorry if I'm offending anyone. I really hope that no one's offended. I'm kind of taking this lightheartedly for how severe it is, probably because my brain is not trying to comprehend how what's at stake. But I don't know. I hope I'm not offending anyone. Like I keep saying, whether you're Trump or Biden, hopefully that has nothing to do with this video, because this video has nothing to do with your choice on that. This is looking at the results, what's at stake here, and whether Trump or Biden won, I would be making a video just like this. It has nothing to do with any of that. I really don't care, right? I really don't. I'm looking at this from a strategical standpoint and what we should do about our investments. So, let me know what you think about all this, though. Monetary policy measure were the first line response to the crisis. In early March 2020, more than 60% of total stimulus came from liquidity injections. At most recent count, while more than 90 countries had used some form of liquidity injection, this had fallen to 15% of the total response as other measures came online. So the global government stimulus response to this pandemic crisis exceeds 10 trillion. See, I really want to know, so that we can go back. I'm going to go back up here real quick. So here's the size of stimulus. So it looks like Italy's the only one that's really, that's really throwing something out there. Canada, well, that's obvious. It's Canada, right? So, I wonder what the gray is. Just people that don't. So, yeah, so it looks like everyone has a pretty good idea from their country or how well their country is on how much they could be giving. So that's interesting. That's what I was worried. That's what I was wondering, if people were like unrealistically throwing out way more money when they're a much broker country than America. And it's interesting because, not even looking at a dollar perspective, the only reason America is the richest country is because we have the most gold. So it's funny how they determine a country's wealth off of precious metals, right? So 3 archetypes. How countries' response today will influence their pathways out of the crisis. That's what, this is where, and I almost want to just skip down to the part that that we were talking about. Hold on, let me see if they have it down here. Okay, here we go. Let's go here. Planning for the recovery. So they're looking at, so as we have discussed, the world's economic, and by the way, before I jump into this, I just skimmed through a lot. I'm trying to highlight the main points, the main parts of this article. As we have discussed, the world's economic response to date has focused on relief. Further interventions will likely be necessary to revive aggregate demand once economies reopen if consumer and business sentiments do not fully rebound, resulting in muted spending and investment. In the United States, for example, the $3 trillion economic response to this pandemic crisis has been allocated almost entirely to immediate relief measures. In contrast, the American Recovery Reinvestment Act 2009 allocated 55% of its total funding, approximately $450 billion, to stimulate industries and revive aggregate demand by investing in infrastructure expansions in the transport, healthcare, education, and energy sectors. So while many of the lessons learned from the recovery and earlier economic crisis can be helpful in designing a recovery plan, there are at least 4 areas that are specifically relevant to the current context. Green energy, and that's definitely one of the biggest, things that we've been looking at. And this is also why gold and silver, well, actually just silver, are so bullish, because this is a huge one. Accelerate government investment in clean energy and incentivize companies to improve energy efficiency. This is photovoltaic cells. This is solar panel. Silver. Why it matters: although the pandemic is not directly linked to climate change, public opinion is in favor of recovery actions that also address clean energy. Close to 70%. So yes, that's important. Environmental and economic impact can be complementary. Creating a low-carbon stimulus program for one European country estimate to require investment between 75 billion euros and 150, which would produce 180 of gross value added to create up 3 million jobs. Number 2, digitalization and new technology wave accelerate government digitalization and support companies adopting new technologies. 3, shaping the workforce of the future. upskill the workforce, able to remain productive in the future, increase of automation, and 4, resilience of supply chain and security of essential goods, support the creation of local industries that will increase countries' resilience. So it looks like people are trying to look forwards, but they're not looking. They're kind of like just veering around the whole consequential part of throwing that much money out. They're talking about what it's going to do, what the money's going to do, right? It's going to be great. It's going to open up more jobs. It's going to do this. It's going to do that. But it doesn't really look like they're thinking about what's going to happen to the dollar and what that's going to, and all the consequences for that. Governments around the world have used quick acting and innovative delivery mechanisms in their stimulus package. So here's Malaysia, France, Indonesia, Peru. I'm going to see Peru and Germany. So Peru, growing number of financial service providers, private banks, mobile money and providers that conduct government-to-person payments. Okay, so in Germany, online portals allow employers to fill out detailed end-of-month timesheets to apply for short-term work compensation from Federal Employment Agency. Okay, so it looks like everyone is trying to get on the same page here, but there's so many pages. It's like we're getting there, but everything's still a little off. And there's still one common denominator. Gold and silver are going to skyrocket from this, ladies and gentlemen. That's why we invest. That's why my name is Silver Slayer. That's why my name isn't Gold Slayer. My name isn't Crypto Slayer anymore. It used to be Crypto Slayer on my second channel. Now it's Silver Slayer 2. My name isn't Equity Slayer. My name isn't Stock Market Slayer, Tesla Slayer, Amazon Slayer. My name is Silver Slayer. And that's for one reason. Silver is the most highly conductive metal for thermal conductivity and electricity. It performs better than any other asset especially for as cheap as it is. Silver is intertwined in everything. Remember back down there we were just talking about the digitalization. Silver is intertwined in everything, from your laptop, your cell phone, your dental alloys, space equipment, solar panels, you name it, silver's in it for its highly conductive, properties I was just talking about. So as we advance technologically, digitally, silver demand is going to be up. 5G technology, solar panels, electric vehicles, you name it, silver demand is going to be up, but silver production is decreasing drastically. So looking at all this, not only does a weak dollar help precious metals, a weak dollar boosts precious metals dramatically, but also everything that's looking like the plan is going to be in action is also going to boost precious metals, more specifically silver, since it's a smaller market and to a larger extent. So I hope you guys understand my perspective on this, right? There's a lot going on. And there's a lot to break down, but hopefully you guys have seen a little glimpse into my perspective of all this and why I say you must own gold and silver. I'm sure you guys have a much different, hopefully somewhat similar, or some similarities. Hopefully you guys have, we're on the same page a little bit. There's nobody that's going to be on the same page as me completely, because there's just too many decisions. There's too many things that you have to acknowledge and decide upon and agree upon. But hopefully we have one common decision, and that is invest into precious metals, right? So this is probably one of the more controversial videos that I'm going to be posting. I'm not scared to post this. It's just there's a lot of opinion, and I really hope I didn't offend anyone. That's the biggest thing. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. I don't want to offend anyone. I honestly don't. And if I did, I truly didn't mean to. I'm just looking at this from strictly an investing perspective, right? Your vote, your opinion matters. I'm not saying it doesn't matter. It matters, and it's great that you voted or whatever. It's great that you have that. I'm not trying to knock it. I'm sure you have the most incredible reasons. I'm just looking at what's going to happen once these things are in play. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to smash the like button, subscribe if you're new. I post daily videos, so you definitely want to be subscribed. You got to stay in the loop with what's happening. More than ever, you do not want to be investing blindly in an economy where things are this severe. You got it, and I'll keep you up to date on a day-to-day basis. Thanks for tuning in. This was Silver Slayer. I'll see you guys soon. Peace.